Ladies and gentlemen in life, not every battle is won through words, arguments, or explanations. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can ever make is your absence. When you are present, your presence is a gift. You give your time, your attention, your energy, things that can never be bought back once spent. But when someone takes that for granted, the greatest punishment you can offer is not anger, not shouting, not even tears, but silence and absence. Your absence becomes a mirror. It forces the other person to face themselves without your energy to distract them. It makes them realize the emptiness they tried to cover with your presence. Suddenly the noise fades and the quiet speaks, and in that silence, regret begins to whisper. Absence is not weakness. It is power. It is the power of saying, I will not beg to be valued. I will not fight to be respected. I will not compete for the attention I deserve. Instead, you take a step back, and that step back becomes the sharpest lesson they will ever learn. You see, punishment doesn't always come in the form of action. Sometimes it comes in the form of removal. The removal of presence, the removal of warmth, the removal of everything they thought would always be there. And that is when absence transforms into a teacher. It teaches them what they lost, what they ignored, and what they may never find again. So remember this, your silence is not emptiness. It is strength. Your absence is not revenge. It is justice. Your absence is his punishment. Absence is not just the lack of presence. It is a language in itself. It is the kind of response that does not require a single word, yet it delivers the sharpest message. When you choose absence, you are not ignoring someone. You are teaching them that not every action deserves your reaction. Not every disrespect deserves your voice. And not every wound deserves your explanation. Absence has a weight that presence cannot always carry. Because when you are there, your words may be argued with, your feelings may be questioned, your emotions may be dismissed. But when you are not there, when your chair is empty, when your voice is missing, when your energy is withdrawn, suddenly the silence speaks louder than anything you could have said. It becomes a mirror, forcing the other person to sit with themselves. To hear their own echoes without your voice softening them. To feel the emptiness that your presence once filled. And in that emptiness, in that gap where you used to stand, a new kind of awareness begins to grow. Awareness of what they had, what they ignored, and what they can no longer touch. Because absence is not weakness. It is the discipline of strength. It is the discipline of knowing when to step back rather than step in. It is the wisdom of choosing silence over noise, and distance over endless conflict. It is a reminder that your presence is valuable, and that if it cannot be respected, it will not be offered. And so absence becomes the most silent yet the most powerful response of all. Presence is like sunlight. Where it shines, things grow. When you are present in someone's life, you feed them with your attention, your care, your time, your energy. Every moment you give is a form of nourishment. You validate their existence by showing up, by listening, by standing beside them when they need you. And because of your presence, they feel significant, they feel noticed, they feel seen. But the moment that presence is withdrawn, something changes. The air grows colder. The conversations they took for granted no longer come. The support they leaned on is suddenly missing. That flow of attention, once steady like a river, is cut off. And when there is no attention, there is no feeding. When there is no feeding, there is hunger. Hunger for your presence, hunger for your energy, hunger for the validation they thought would always be available. It is in that absence that the truth reveals itself. Attention was never ordinary, it was extraordinary. Your presence was never just company, it was comfort, it was power, it was life. And when it is taken away, the starvation begins. Starvation not of food, but of significance. Starvation of the feeling of being valued, of being noticed, of being important in your eyes. Because presence is what fills the room with light, and absence is what turns that light into shadow. And only in the shadow does one realize how bright the light used to be. Only in the silence does one understand how loud your attention truly was. There comes a point when words lose their meaning. You can explain yourself 100 times, you can argue until your throat is dry, you can pour out your pain in endless sentences, and still it falls on deaf ears. Because when a person has already decided not to listen, no amount of speaking will ever make them hear. And that is where silence becomes more powerful than speech. Silence has a way of cutting deeper than any argument could. Arguments invite resistance, they create walls, they trigger defensiveness, but silence slips through the cracks of the mind. It lingers in the empty spaces where words once lived. It makes the other person question what is no longer being said. They begin to wonder, why is it so quiet now? Why has the voice that always rose in defense, in pain, in explanation, suddenly gone? And that wondering eats at them, because silence cannot be interrupted, cannot be debated, cannot be overpowered. Silence is not an invitation to fight. It is a decision to end the fight without announcing it. And in that decision, in that withdrawal, the weight of truth is felt more than it is spoken. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the ability to understand that not every storm deserves thunder. Sometimes the most powerful thunder is the absence of noise, the refusal to keep feeding chaos with energy. Silence says, I am no longer available to argue. I am no longer here to explain. I am no longer willing to waste my words where they will not be valued. And that silence grows heavy. It becomes the punishment they never expected. Because words they could ignore, but silence they cannot escape. There is a kind of strength that is not found in holding on, but in letting go. Many people believe that staying proves love, proves loyalty, proves patience. But sometimes staying only teaches the other person that they can mistreat you and you will still be there. Sometimes staying sends the wrong message, that no matter what they do, they will never lose you. And when people believe they will never lose you, they stop valuing you, but walking away. That is different. Walking away is not weakness, it is not surrender, it is not defeat. It is a declaration. It says, I refuse to teach you that disrespect is acceptable. I refuse to show you that my love comes without boundaries. I refuse to give you the comfort of my presence while you misuse it. When you walk away, you create a space that cannot be ignored. Suddenly, the laughter you brought is gone, the warmth you gave is missing, the comfort you offered has vanished, and in that emptiness the lesson begins. They realize that the constant they thought would always remain has become the silence they must now live with. Staying often prolongs pain, but walking away accelerates awareness. Walking away forces reflection. Walking away teaches in a way that words never could. Because when you are there, they can deny, they can dismiss, they can deflect. But when you are gone, they have nothing left to fight but their own thoughts, and those thoughts are relentless. Walking away is not about abandoning someone. It is about choosing yourself. It is about showing that your presence is not a prison, it is a privilege. And when that privilege is abused, it will be taken away. And in that taking away, in that departure, lies the strongest lesson of all, that your absence is not just distance, it is consequence. When you are always present, people rarely stop to think about what you truly mean to them. They move through their days assuming you will always answer the call, always show up when needed, always stand close no matter how lightly they hold you. But absence has a way of breaking that illusion. Absence forces them to sit in silence and confront what life feels like without you in it. It is in that silence that reflection begins. They replay moments in their mind, the times you spoke gently but were ignored, the times you gave your best but it went unnoticed, the times you stood close but were treated like background noise. And as those memories surface, a slow ache starts to grow. The kind of ache that whispers, you had something rare and you wasted it. Reflection soon gives birth to regret, because regret does not arrive when you are still there. It arrives when you are gone. Regret lives in the empty chair you once filled, in the unread messages that will never be answered, in the quiet evenings where your voice no longer carries across the room. Regret thrives in the distance your absence creates, feeding on the realization that your presence was not ordinary. It was extraordinary. And what is regret if not the heaviest punishment of all? Words cannot force regret. Arguments cannot create it. But absence plants the seed. Absence waters it with silence. Absence allows time to do what time always does. Remind people of what they lost only after it has slipped from their hands. That is why absence is not just distance. It is a mirror, a teacher, a judge. It gives the other person space not to speak, but to think, not to demand, but to remember, not to deny, but to regret. And regret, once it settles in the heart, is not easily erased. Anger is loud, it is fiery, it is explosive. It shakes the room, it fills the air, it makes its presence known. But anger, no matter how sharp, always gives the other person something. They still have your energy, they still have your reaction, they still hold a piece of your attention. And as long as they have your anger, they still have your presence. But indifference, that is where the real punishment lies. Indifference is the absence of reaction, the refusal to give even a spark of emotion. Indifference says, you no longer hold the power to disturb my peace. You no longer have the privilege of my fire. You no longer deserve the gift of my response. Indifference is colder than anger. Anger can be explained away. They're mad because they still care. But indifference cannot be explained, cannot be softened. It is a wall of silence where once there was energy. It is a stillness that suffocates. It is the unspoken message. You are no longer important enough to move me. And that, more than any argument, more than any scream, more than any tear, is what breaks a person. Because people can fight your anger, they can match your fire, they can argue back and forth until exhaustion. But when there is no fire to fight, when there is no reaction to push against, when there is nothing left but silence and still, suddenly the game ends. Indifference leaves them stranded with their own actions, their own words, their own choices. It forces them to face themselves without the distraction of your energy. It makes them realize that they no longer hold influence over you, and that realization, that they are no longer significant enough to move you, is the deepest cut of all. True punishment was never in raising your voice, it was in lowering your attention. True punishment was never in proving your pain, it was in proving your peace. True punishment is not in anger, but in indifference. So often people confuse distance with weakness. They think that if you walk away, if you create space, if you step back, it must mean you were too fragile to endure, too soft to handle, too broken to stay. But the truth is the complete opposite. Distance is not the sign of weakness. It is the highest display of strength. Because weakness clings, weakness begs to stay, even when it is being mistreated. Weakness holds on tightly, even to the things that are cutting it apart. Weakness says, I cannot live without you. But strength says, I can and I will. Strength knows when to stop feeding what drains it. Strength knows when to step back, even if the heart still pulls forward. Strength knows that peace is greater than chaos, and dignity is greater than desperation. Distance takes courage. It takes courage to remove yourself from what is familiar, to walk away from the comfort of routine, even if that routine is hurting you. It takes courage to face the silence of your own company rather than the noise of someone else's disregard. It takes courage to say, I love myself enough to step away. And that distance, once created, speaks louder than anything else. It says, I will not be reduced to begging. I will not be defined by your neglect. I will not shrink myself just to remain close to you. Distance says, I matter. And the beautiful thing about distance is that it is undeniable. No one can argue with it. No one can twist it. No one can dismiss it. Because it is visible, it is tangible, it is real. They can't pretend you are still there when you are not. They can't pretend your presence is endless when it has been withdrawn. That is why distance is not weakness. Distance is strength disguised as silence. It is dignity wrapped in space. It is the proof that you can choose yourself, even when it hurts, even when it feels heavy, even when every part of you wanted to stay. Distance shows strength, not weakness. There comes a moment when words no longer serve their purpose. You have spoken, you have explained, you have poured out every truth you could find, but the more you speak, the less they seem to hear. Your words, though heavy with meaning, begin to sound like noise in their ears. And so, you realize, words have limits. They can only travel so far, only touch so deeply, only last so long before they fade into the background. But absence has no such limit. Absence is a message that does not need translation. It cannot be twisted, cannot be denied, cannot be ignored. Because absence is visible, it is felt, it is undeniable. An empty chair in the room is not a theory, it is proof. A silent phone that no longer rings is not imagination. It is reality. A presence once constant, now missing, speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. Absence becomes the letter that never needed to be written, the speech that never needed to be delivered. It is the unspoken declaration, I will no longer waste my breath trying to convince you. Instead, I will let my absence teach you what my words never could. And in that silence, the mind of the other begins to wander. They start to recall the moments you used to fill, the energy you used to bring, the light you used to shine, and the more they remember, the heavier the absence feels. Because words could be brushed aside, but absence cannot be brushed away. It is there, staring them in the face, reminding them of what once was and what is no longer theirs to claim. Absence has a sharpness that words never carry. Words can be argued with, twisted, dismissed. But absence leaves no room for argument. It simply is. And in its quiet, it becomes the clearest message of all. When words fail, when explanations fall short, when arguments lose their power, absence steps in. And absence does not whisper, it roars. Peace is one of the most precious treasures a person can have. It cannot be bought, it cannot be borrowed, it cannot be faked. Peace is the calmness of your heart, the quiet of your mind, the balance of your soul. And when someone disrupts that peace, when their presence brings more storms than sunshine, when their words weigh heavier than their silence, then absence becomes your shield. Absence is not only about punishing them, it is about protecting you. It is about creating a boundary so strong that no disrespect, no chaos, no manipulation can cross it. When you step away, you are not running. You are building a wall of distance that guards your heart, your sanity, your strength. And within that space, within that distance, you begin to heal. Because sometimes peace is not found in fixing people. It is found in removing yourself from the people who break you. Sometimes peace is not in more conversations, but in fewer. Sometimes peace is not in giving more chances, but in giving yourself the chance to breathe without them. Absence creates that breathing room. It is the pause after the noise. It is the silence after the storm. It is the reminder that you have the right to choose calm over chaos, stillness over struggle, clarity over confusion, and the more you choose peace, the more powerful you become. People often mistake endurance for strength. They think staying in pain makes you brave, but true bravery is walking away to protect your peace. True courage is saying, my soul matters more than your comfort. My heart matters more than your games. My peace matters more than your presence. And the beauty of absence is that it not only protects your peace, it restores it. Slowly, day by day, as the noise fades and the distance grows, you begin to rediscover yourself. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, feel your own heartbeat again, dream your own dreams again, without the weight of their shadow hovering over you. Absence is not abandonment, it is protection. Protection of your spirit, protection of your dignity, protection of your peace. There is one currency more valuable than money, more precious than gold, more rare than anything that can be held in your hands, and that is attention. Attention is energy, it is focus, it is presence. When you give someone your attention, you are giving them a piece of your life you will never get back. Every glance, every word, every thought you invest in someone is a silent statement. You matter to me. But the tragedy is this: most people do not realize the worth of that gift while they are receiving it. They think your attention is endless. They think your focus is automatic. They think your time, your listening, your care will always be there waiting for them. And so they misuse it, they overlook it, they grow careless with it. But the moment you take that attention back, everything changes. Suddenly, the endless river of energy they once drank from runs dry. Suddenly, the eyes that once looked for them turn elsewhere. Suddenly, the focus that once followed them like light now shines on your own growth, your own peace, your own future. And that shift is powerful. Because when you take your attention back, you are reclaiming your worth. You are saying, my focus is too valuable to waste on someone who cannot treasure it. My time is too sacred to give to someone who does not respect it. My energy is too limited to pour into someone who only drains it. And the absence of your attention is felt more strongly than your presence ever was. When you stop listening, they begin to talk to themselves. When you stop noticing, they begin to feel invisible. When you stop feeding them with your focus, they begin to starve in ways they never imagined possible. That is the power of taking back your attention. It is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is not revenge, it is self-respect. It is the reminder that the most valuable gift you can give is not things, not promises, not even time. It is the light of your attention. And when that light goes out, darkness takes over. And in that darkness, they finally realize how much it meant to be seen by you. Taking back your attention is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the moment you stop watering what cannot grow and start watering yourself instead. There is something remarkable about absence. It does not only teach others a lesson, it teaches you a lesson. Because every time you step back, every time you withdraw from places where you are not valued, you are silently reminding yourself of who you are. You are telling yourself, I deserve better than this, I am worth more than this treatment, I carry too much dignity to remain where I am not respected. Self-worth is not discovered in the crowd, it is discovered in the silence of your own absence. When you are no longer wrapped in the noise of other people's opinions, when you are no longer drained by the weight of their demands, when you are no longer tied down by the rope of their neglect, you begin to see yourself clearly. You begin to remember that your worth is not defined by how they see you, but by how you choose to see yourself. Absence teaches dignity in a way presence never could. Because when you stay in places where you are dishonored, your silence may look like acceptance. They may think you are willing to endure anything, just to remain close. But when you step away, when you refuse to give them the gift of your nearness, your absence declares what your lips may have struggled to say. I will not compromise my dignity for your comfort. I will not shrink my worth to fit your blindness. And as that distance grows, something powerful happens inside you. You realize that dignity is not in being chosen, it is in choosing yourself. Dignity is not in proving your value to those who cannot see it. It is in walking away until they feel the emptiness of your loss. Dignity is not about begging for a seat at someone else's table. It is about building your own table and understanding that whoever fails to join has only cheated themselves. Absence becomes the classroom where dignity is taught. It becomes the mirror where self-worth is revealed. It becomes the quiet reminder that you do not need to fight for a crown you already wear. You only need to stop placing it at the feet of those who cannot recognize its shine. Absence is not running away, It is rising above. It is choosing self-respect over self-betrayal. It is standing tall enough to say, I will not be broken to belong. I will not be diminished to be kept. I will not lose myself to keep you comfortable. And in that realization, you find not only freedom, but a strength that silence alone could never teach. Human beings are wired to notice change. They may ignore consistency, they may overlook what is always present, but the moment something shifts, the moment something once steady disappears, they cannot help but pay attention, and that is what absence does. It disrupts the pattern, it interrupts the normal, it breaks the cycle they thought would never end. When you are always there, always available, always present, they stop questioning your presence. They take it as a guarantee, like the sun that rises each morning. But the moment you step back, the moment you no longer answer in the same way, no longer appear in the same places, no longer offer the same energy, a seed of curiosity begins to grow in their mind. Where did they go? Why the change? What happened? And that curiosity soon turns into doubt. Doubt about themselves, doubt about the strength of their influence, doubt about whether they were as important as they once believed, because your absence becomes the unanswered question they cannot ignore. It is the silence that keeps them awake at night, the gap that their thoughts cannot fill, the empty space they keep staring at, wondering what it means. Absence makes them replay every interaction, searching for clues. They remember your last words, your last look, your last gesture, trying to decode the silence that has replaced your presence. And the more they think, the more that doubt grows. Did I push them too far? Did I misuse their love? Did I break something that cannot be repaired? Curiosity unsettles the mind, but doubt torments the soul. Doubt forces them to confront the possibility that what they assumed would last forever has already slipped through their fingers. Doubt whispers in the quiet, what if they never return? What if their silence is permanent? What if I was the reason for their absence? And that is the hidden strength of absence. It does not chase, it does not explain, it does not beg. It simply creates a silence so loud, a space so heavy, that their own thoughts become the punishment. Your absence builds the prison, and their curiosity and doubt become the chains. There are consequences in life that are louder than punishment, harsher than anger, sharper than revenge, and one of them is the loss of presence. People often fear words, fear confrontation, fear judgment, but what they should truly fear is the day your presence no longer belongs to them. Because presence is not just physical, it is emotional, it is spiritual, it is the constant flow of attention, care, and energy that you poured into their world. When you were there, they had someone to rely on, someone to listen, someone to stand with them even in their chaos. They had your laughter, your warmth, your support, your energy wrapping around them like a safety net they never acknowledged. And because it was always there, they treated it as if it would never disappear. But the moment that presence is gone, the reality hits them with a force they cannot escape. Suddenly, the room feels colder, the conversations are emptier, the silence grows heavier. They realize that it wasn't just you standing beside them. It was your presence holding everything together. And without it, things start to collapse. Losing your presence is not a punishment you need to announce. It announces itself. It is the hollow space where your energy used to live. It is the quiet where your voice once echoed. It is the absence of everything they assumed would always remain. And in that absence they come face to face with the truth. Your presence was never ordinary, it was extraordinary. Sometimes the harshest lesson is not in what you say, but in what you no longer offer. Sometimes the deepest wound is not what you give, but what you take away. And sometimes the greatest consequence of all is not anger, not rejection, not even silence. It is simply that your presence, the very gift they misused, is no longer theirs to receive. Because when your presence leaves, it leaves with all its weight, all its comfort, all its attention, all its loyalty. And in that emptiness, they finally begin to understand what they lost. When you are always present, people blend your presence into the background of their lives. They mistake your consistency for permanence. They believe your energy, your care, your sacrifices are part of the natural order, as if they are owed, as if they will always exist no matter how they treat you. But the moment you step away, the moment you remove yourself from the routine, a deep revelation begins to unfold. Absence acts like a mirror. It does not just expose the strength of your own boundaries, it also exposes the hearts of those around you. Because when you are gone, you will see who notices and who remains silent. You will see who searches and who shrugs. You will see who feels the weight of your missing presence, and who acts as though you were never there at all. And this is where truth lives, not in the smiles when you are giving, not in the words when you are available, not in the promises spoken when you are close. The truth reveals itself in your absence. Because those who truly value you will feel the ache of that gap, and they will move. Move to reach you, move to honor you, move to restore what was lost. But those who only consumed you, those who only used your presence without gratitude, will stay still, will remain silent, will pretend as though nothing has changed. Absence strips away illusions. It uncovers loyalty and exposes neglect. It shows you the difference between someone who cherished your presence and someone who only exploited it. And in that revelation, you gain clarity. You no longer need to guess who loves you for convenience and who values you from the core of their being. Those who value you will not allow your absence to remain unanswered. They will feel it in their days, in their nights, in their very breath. They will try to rebuild the bridge, to close the gap, to pull you back into their lives. Not out of desperation, but out of recognition of your worth. But those who never valued you, who only saw you as an option, will let the absence linger without movement. And in that silence, they reveal themselves more than words ever could. So absence is not just a punishment for them. It is also a gift for you. A gift of truth, a gift of vision, a gift of seeing clearly who is truly aligned with your soul and who is only taking advantage of your light. And when you see that truth, you no longer beg, you no longer plead, you no longer chase. You simply allow absence to complete its work. You allow it to separate the real from the fake, the loyal from the temporary, the grateful from the ungrateful. Because absence is the ultimate revealer. It shows you, without question, who truly values you. There are moments when words lose their weight, when explanations fall flat, when arguments circle endlessly without resolution. In those moments, silence becomes the language, absence becomes the statement, and together they form a voice more powerful than any speech, more piercing than any confrontation, more unforgettable than any plea. Silence has a sharpness words cannot reach. When you do not explain, they are left to explain it to themselves. When you do not justify, they are forced to justify it in their own mind. When you do not respond, the unanswered space echoes louder than anything you could have said. Your silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of weight, full of lessons they cannot escape. And absence, coupled with that silence, is the shadow that follows them everywhere. It sits at the table where you once sat. It lingers in the places you once filled. It haunts the moments they thought you would always be part of. Absence is not just the lack of presence. It is the constant reminder of what is missing, what they lost, what they failed to honor when they had it. Words can be denied, but silence cannot. Explanations can be twisted, but absence cannot. They can argue with your voice, but they cannot argue with your disappearance. Silence and absence force them to wrestle not with you, but with themselves. Their mind becomes the battlefield, their guilt becomes the weapon, their regret becomes the punishment, and the longer the silence, the heavier it grows. The longer the absence, the deeper it cuts. It is not you chasing, it is not you proving, it is not you pleading. It is them realizing, slowly, painfully, that your presence was not ordinary, that your energy was not replaceable, that your voice was not noise but music. And in that realization they learn what words could never teach them. This is why silence and absence are not weakness. They are strength. They are not surrender, they are power. Because sometimes the greatest declaration is no declaration at all. Sometimes the loudest message is the one never spoken. Sometimes the heaviest punishment is not what you do to them, but what you withhold from them. Your presence, your words, your very being. So remember this truth. Your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. When they fail to value it, do not shout, do not argue, do not beg. Simply step back. Let your absence speak the words your mouth no longer needs to. Let your silence carry the weight your voice no longer should. Because sometimes the greatest punishment is not what you do. It is what you no longer give. And when they finally realize that your presence was the blessing they misused, it will already be too late.